Hi, this is Natalie. Thank you for listening to Crossroads Church, where we are bringing a real God to real people. I believe you'll be inspired by today's message.
Good morning. How is everybody? Good. Well, I'm Joel. I'm the long-lost teaching guy around here. Been gone for a few weeks, so some of you are like, who is that guy up there? I'm honored to serve under our pastors, Marcus and Natalie. And I'm going to be honest about something. So like around about November, we get together and we kind of plan out what we feel like God is wanting to talk to the congregation about this year. Pastor Marcus leads that. And he lets me pick a couple topics. He picks a couple topics, and then we share some of them. So this week, actually 3 weeks ago, he told me what the topic was. And I started working on this message. I'm like, man, I don't really like this topic. So I called Marcus Friday. I'm like, did you pick this or did I? And he's like, well, I picked it. I was like, that makes sense because I'm not getting anything here, man. Like, I was like, what was your intention for this? And so we started talking about it. And I've told you guys this a few years ago. When I first started serving here with Pastor Marcus and Natalie, a dear friend of ours, he's a psychiatrist. He's from the Bahamas. He's most brilliant man I ever know, Dr. Allen. I was talking to him one day, and he said to me, he said, Joel, he called me Joel. He said, Joel, you must learn from Marcus. He's like, he understands the cloud. And I said, what the heck does that mean? He's like, stop asking, Joel, just learn from Marcus. Learn what it means to have the cloud pass over you. I still don't know what that means, but here's what I think it means. Every time Marcus picks a topic that I'm like, I got nothing. It's like God is using that topic to speak to me. And I don't know if you know this, but we people who get up and do this, we're people too. We got issues. If you haven't figured that out yet, I don't know what to do for you. We are not set apart, angelic. Ask my wife. I don't float around during the week thinking deep thoughts. We have arguments. We have fights. I get annoyed with people walking down the middle of the aisle while I'm speaking. Like, stuff happens, right? And I just have to learn to deal with it, right? And faith is one of those challenging things for me because I grew up, I joke about this all the time. I've been hanging out in the church for 45 years. And I think faith looks different in different seasons of life. And what you call faith may not be what I call faith, right? And what's interesting about faith is it's really confusing to me too because, so there's this one verse that really messes with me, okay? It says this, and he did not do any miracles there. This is Jesus. He's wandering around doing stuff for people. But it says he didn't do many miracles there because of their lack of faith. Now, I went to churches for a while, and these churches were super fun. And they were like, you can put limits on what God does because of what you believe. And here's the thing. I actually believe that's kind of true sometimes, but not all the time. So prosperity preachers will say, you get to decide the terms of how much God blesses you, which I kind of sort of agree with sometimes. And I think sometimes, like early in our faith, he actually lets us get away with that. If you're new to the faith, you need to ask big things of God because he wants to prove himself strong to you. But there comes a point where like the deal changes. So like my daughter, she thinks she owns me. She's 7. Whatever she wants, I'm like, I'll play along. I love you, kid. I'll play along. But there's certain time where it comes to things that she wants, and I'm like, nuh-uh, that's not what, you're not going to get that. I don't care how much you have faith in me being willing to buy you that. She wants a poodle right now. A teacup poodle. I'm just like, there's going to come a point where I'm like, no, you don't, that's not how the rules work. I'm dad and you're not. And it's my money, and I get to do with it what I'm going to want to do, right? So there's these stages of faith, and sometimes we believe that faith is like, if I can drum up enough, God will do it for me. And here's the thing, I think sometimes that's true. When? I don't know. This is where it's so tricky. Because a lot of times we want to bottle in faith and say this is what it is. But here's the other thing. Sometimes I've had tremendous amounts of faith and the thing I was believing for didn't happen. Then there are other times where I've had zero faith. I've been like, well, that's going to turn out bad. And God does something crazy and makes it turn out really good. And then you get to verses that are really encouraging that are like this one. If we're faithless, he remains faithful because he can't deny himself. Which is really good news for some of you, because some of you this morning, you're going, I don't know if I've got any faith to do this. Like, I'm done. I don't think I can keep up doing this. My kid, this has worn me out. I don't even know if I have any faith that things can get better. Some of you financially, you're just like, I cannot get on top of this. I don't know if there's any way this can get better. Some of you, it's your marriage. You're like, I just don't see any way it can get better. And listen, this is a crazy thing. I've seen people who literally have said, all right, I give up on my marriage, and then God restores it. What? What was that all about? Faith is really, it's wacky, right? It's confusing. And anybody that tells you it's not, like if they know it, like, so this is what used to frustrate me. People be like, I was talking to somebody the other day and I said, I really don't know what faith is. He's like, well, bro, it's really clear what faith is. Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we don't see. I'm like, great. Jesus juke me. You know, that's what you call it when somebody like. My question is, what the heck does this mean? Because there's these words, like, right, this word here, confidence. So this word pistis, faith, is pretty sturdy. It's like it's strong belief, right? This word confidence, if you get into the Greek, it's a weird word. Hypostasis is the word. You want to come at me with Bible? I'll come at you. Here. People think they can out-Bible me. I've been doing this for 45 years. Here. It's to possess standing under a guaranteed agreement. It's like a title deed. So like when you get your house and you pay it off, which some of you are like, what does that mean? To have something paid off, right? Or when let's go with a car. All right. When you get your car paid off, they're like, here, you like officially own this now and nobody can take it from you. So he's saying faith is getting this like title deed saying, here's what you have access to, it's yours. Title to a promise or property. It's a legitimate claim because it's literally under a legal standing. It's entitling someone to what is guaranteed under the particular agreement. So that's cool, right? But that's like 1/10 of the definition. Bro, faith is confidence. Oh, okay, so what does that mean? Of what we hope for and assurance about what we say. So I did a lot of research, and I'm not going to go through all of my processed thoughts this week for what I came up with, but here's what I've concluded with. I love this translation. It says, now faith is the reality of what is hoped for and the proof of what is not seen. Faith as reality. And here's what I'm convinced of. The biggest thing we can do in life is agree with reality. But most of us, it takes a lifetime to get to see more and more reality. Because reality is a frightening thing. Reality is very frightening. So what most of us do, we just blind ourselves to it, right? God is a very frightening thing. It says it's a scary thing to stand in the hands of a powerful God, right? There's this element of God that's a very scary thing. Carl Jung, he said this, he said, religion is an attempt for man to avoid a direct experience of God. So what we do is we go, hey, pastor, talk to God for me and tell me what he wants me to do. Because it's a scary thing to be a servant to God. That's what religion has been throughout the years. And God all this time, he says, no, I want a relationship with you. And that's why he sent Jesus. He said, yeah, you've really messed things up, but I'm sending Jesus. And he's going to be the way that you can directly connect with me because he's going to take care of what you couldn't take care of in our relationship. And now you can come directly to me. It's called the priesthood of every believer. The priesthood of every believer means you don't need me to talk to God for you. You get to go yourself, which most of us, that's a scary proposition. Well, what if he tells me something I don't want to hear? And he will. It's true. Agreement with reality, which is interesting because we live in a world right now that really has a problem agreeing with reality. because we've got science. So we think we can alter reality, but eventually reality catches up with you. And this is where I'm convinced humility is also agreement with reality. Humility is saying, this is the reality of what God has made. This is the reality of how God has made me. Yes, I can think there's 32 genders, but it's male and female. That's how he made them. It's the bottom line. And you can fight with it all you want, but eventually reality is going to catch up with you. And the most important thing we can do as believers, people of faith, is say, even though I don't understand why God would say this, I'm going to surrender myself believing in faith that what he says is true, even if I don't understand it. And that's the challenge. Because there's a ton of stuff I read in the Bible that I go, man, I wish that wasn't in there. I just wish that. It really messes with my theology. I got it all figured out. Here's who God is, and then he does something wacky. I'm like, well, that doesn't fit. So what do? We ignore the parts we don't like. But faith is this ever awakening to reality. But here's how I'm convinced we awaken to it. And this is where I had this beautiful thing. We have to have a real-ization. It has to become real to us. And the way it becomes real to us is you got to experience it. A person with experience is never at the mercy of a person with a theory. And we got all these theories about what faith is. So I was like, how am I going to talk today about what faith is? And I realized, here's how I'm going to talk about what faith is. I'm just going to tell you a bunch of stories of God's faithfulness in my life with the hope that it will encourage you in what you're going through. So I've got like 10 of them. We'll see how much time I got. First one was, I was working for Southwest Airlines, and I felt like God told me to go on the mission field and start taking people on outdoor adventures around the world. And I was going to need to raise financial support for that. And I was a little nervous because I had a really good job at Southwest Airlines. I'd worked there through college. And it was right after I announced to my boss I was going to be quitting, fear overtook me. And I'm like, because he said to me, well, what are you going to do for money? I was like, well, people are going to give to me to do this. And he looked at me and goes, are you sure? And I was like, well, faith is the assurance of things hoped for. No, I didn't say that. I was like, crap, what if they don't give? So I started socking money away. Well, about a month before I was going to quit, I had about $5,000 set aside. It's the most money I'd ever had set aside in my life. I was pretty happy. I was like, you know what? I could live off this for a while if I need to. A friend of mine, he calls me and invites me to go to this graduation in Dallas, Christ for the Nations Institute. What the heck? I'll go up there. Let's do it. I got a road trip with my buddy. Got up there. Before the graduation, the founder of the school gets up and she says, there's 10 people in here that God is calling to give $1,000. And I was like, I knew it was me. So I got up and ran out of the building. So my friend follows me, Jacoby. He's like, where you going, bro? I'm like, I'm getting out of here. He's like, why? Why'd you run out of there? I'm like, nah. So we go to McDonald's. I get a Big Mac. And he's like, dude, what's wrong with you? Like, why'd you run out of there? And I was like, man, I think I'm supposed to be one of those people that gives $1,000. And he's like, dude, well, why don't you do it? I'm like, well, I got this little nest egg going here where if God doesn't provide, I got a backup plan. Come on. That's wisdom. And Jacoby wasn't known for being nice. He said, you idiot, you need to get it back there and give that money. So I hummed and hummed and hawed, and I went back and I gave my $1,000. And then I got home, got a letter in the mail from a friend of mine. You know who it was? It was actually Amber, his daughter. She says, hey, I need to go to Mexico on this mission trip. I need money. And I was like, over the next few weeks, God systematically dismantled my savings account. But I remember writing that last check, And I remember kind of looking up at God and going, I'm going to do this, but you'd better provide for me. That's faith, man. Tell God what's up, right? Some people would say that's what faith is. And maybe for a season that is what's up. And here's the cool thing about it, though. He's never not provided for me. In fact, year over year since that time, every year, somehow I've managed to make a little bit more money every year. Not a lot, but a little bit more. And I believe it was that seed that was planted of giving. So some of you this morning, right now, you're looking at your faith, your finances, you're trying to figure out your faith. And actually what God's wanting you to do is to stop having faith in your backup plan in your finances. Now listen, there's wisdom, right? Seek counsel. But some of you, what's holding you back right now is your faith. It's going to require action. And here's what all of my stories you're going to notice all my stories, they're going to require some level of action on your part. Because faith apart from works is dead. That's what it says in James. And, we don't ask for money around here. We've got a little box in the back that says give. That's the most commanding thing we ever say about money. Verb. It's also a noun, right? Or give, noun. I don't know, anyway, whatever it is. And some of you, man, like what's been holding you back is you just need to be more generous because you've been so worried about being poor that it's actually creating a cycle of poverty is more of a mindset, really, than anything. You can be poor and be a millionaire. It's in your mindset, right? And some of you, God wants to release you from that fear of that by you giving. And this isn't a message about giving, but I'm just saying sometimes faith looks like giving beyond what you're comfortable giving in faith, giving till it hurts, which I'm very familiar with. And since that time, I've been able to give way more than that amount of money. But it's always, my activated faith is me being willing to give until it hurts a little bit. So maybe for you this morning, your financial struggles is because you're holding so tightly to that money that offers security for you. And your action is going to have to be, I got to get more generous. Marcus didn't tell me to talk about this. I'm just telling you what I've experienced in my life. So do with it what you want. Remember, a person with experience is never the mercy of a person with a theory. And a lot of times, the stuff that you're saying, wow, it's easy for you to say that. I'm like, yeah, it is easy for me to say that because I've experienced it. But you're never going to be able to say it yourself until you've experienced it. But you don't get to do that until you take the step. So, I go on the mission field. I'm kind of lonely. I want a wife. And I've got this list of 7 things I want in a wife. And all my friends, they're all married. They got married at like 18. My best friend got married at 18. He's got a kid that's about to graduate college. I got a kid going to 3rd grade. So I give him that list. He's like, bro, I'm going to pray for you. I was like, why? He's like, I hope you're used to get used to being single. It's like, that's just too much to ask. I was like, it's not anything I haven't done myself that I'm asking for. Very specific things. All my friends are like, you're never going to find that. You will never, ever find that. So I waited and waited and waited and waited and waited. 29, I married Emily. Yes. And she met all my 7 ridiculous criteria. That's the thing. And then some. God provided in her what I did not even know I needed for myself. I'll never forget when we got married. The night before the wedding, her dad came to me and he said, normally I would be worried about a woman being married to somebody like you. This is my father-in-law. He said, but I've trained my daughter to stand up to people like you. And it's true. You guys think Emily's all nice and sweet. But when she needs to throw down, she will. And it's a blessing to me because I need somebody that can contend with me. Because I'm kind of a bully. Let's fight. Here's the other thing, okay? God was faithful to provide that. Here's the other thing. I did some stupid stuff to tick off my future father-in-law before I knew he was going to be my father-in-law. I know y'all can't imagine me doing that, but I'm a new, kinder, gentler Joel now. But I was very brash. I said some stupid stuff. I really ticked off this guy who I didn't know was going to be my father-in-law. And then I met his daughter, and I'm like, I've really burned the bridge here. And when we first got married, I never thought there would be a way that relationship with my father-in-law could be restored. But you know what? God did it. And now, like, I'm his golden child. He likes me better than his own kids. Emily thinks that's ridiculous when I say that. But here's my point. Some of you, man, you've been longing for somebody to fulfill that thing in your heart, that empty space in your heart. And your act of faith may need to be this. Stop just dating everyone and wait until God brings the right one. But what if he never does? Well, you'll never know until you try. But if you're throwing yourself at everybody that's coming along because you're afraid of being lonely, the right one may come along and be like, well, he's with somebody. She's with somebody. You've got to be willing to be by yourself so that he can open the door. Some of you, the relationship with family members, it's like so devastated you don't know what to do. And here was my act of faith. I actually went and apologized to him for what I had done. Some of you, your biggest act of faith you need to humble your freaking self and go apologize. Well, they won't do anything. How do you know? It's amazing what an apology will do. Just humble yourself. That could be your act of faith. But remember, you're not going to get any of this results until you take the step and act and do it. So we get married, moved to Mexico, wrote about that in Connecting the Dots, moved to Peru, come back to the U.S. The very same week that my wife gets hired at United Airlines, I get unceremoniously released from a church staff without being told. The pastor offers my job to somebody else while I'm on vacation, and I'm devastated. So I'm no longer on staff at a church. My good friend who was the pastor betrayed me, hurt my feelings really bad. I was mad at the church. Emily's got this job, but they said she's going to have to move to New York for this job. And I was like, New York? I hate New York. I don't want to live in New York. Some of y'all that live, that's why you came here. You know New York. Anyway. And I called my mentor, David, and I said, David, man, I just lost this job. And here's what he told, and I said, but Emily got this job, but I don't want her to move to New York, and I don't want to move to New York, and we'll be apart. And he told me this. He said, Joel, I feel like this next season isn't about you. It's about something God wants to do in Emily. So you need to do whatever it takes to support her. Make sure she succeeds. Put everything you've got behind her. And I was like, well, what about me? He's like, stop worrying about you. I was like, I need a purpose and a calling. And he's like, no, you focus on making her calling succeed. Anyways, after the training's done, she goes through 5 to 6 weeks of training? Yeah. She finds out she gets Houston. I'm like, all right, Houston it is. We were living in Corpus Christi at the time. Very hard time because I didn't know what I was doing. And so I felt like I was like, okay, well, what's the best way I can support her? And she had to be very close to the airport because they could call her within 2 hours to just fly her to wherever. I can't tell you how many times we'd be on one time we're on our way to a birthday party and she gets a phone call and they're like, you're going to Nigeria in an hour. Get to the airport, right? So this was the life she had to live. So I realized we need to move to Houston. So we just started. Now, Houston's big, y'all. You know, it's like 100 miles across. We started looking at places and looking at places and looking at places and looking at places. We ended up landing in this one spot right on the border of Woodlands, Tomball, and Magnolia. It's out in the middle of the trees. This is the house that opened up for us. We could afford it. We moved there. Emily starts working her job. Here's what happened. God strategically positioned us where we were. We were literally 1 mile away from two of the most important relationships I would make probably, connecting with these guys who would help launch what I'm doing now. They coached me in how to do it, and they were 2 miles from my house. Of all the places in all of Houston we could have moved to. Wasn't even in Houston. It was out in the woods. God put me there. While we're there, I'm on a plane. And there's this guy, and he's dressed in this pink shirt or his fluffy shirt and pink pants. And I'm like, that is clearly a youth pastor or a musician, right? I'm in Denver, right? I'm in Denver, and I see this guy, and I'm like, I do not want to talk to that guy. I don't like to talk to hipster youth pastors. Last minute, my flight, now remember, I'm still in Houston, and I hadn't made all these connections yet. We had just moved there, right? So I hadn't known that 2 miles down the street was a guy that was going to help launch the ministry with me. We get right as I'm about to board, they call me, and they're like, hey, we had to change your seat. And I was elite status with United, right? So I was like, I should have been up front. And instead, they moved me to the very back of the plane. You know who I ended up sitting next to on a full flight? Pink pants. I sat down next to him. We started talking. I felt like the Lord told me to talk to him. And I didn't want to because I was tired and I didn't want to talk to a hipster youth pastor. I found out he wasn't a hipster youth pastor. He was actually a pastor at a very influential church in Houston. We started talking. I also found out he wrote my favorite Spanish worship song. God strategically positioned me next to him, connected me with that church, launched us forward. But it was all because I obeyed what the Lord was saying to make sure Emily succeed. And when I did whatever I could to make sure she succeeded, God let me succeed too. Some of you, your act of faith today needs to be this. You need to give up on your dream for a little while and help somebody else launch their dream. You've been so focused on your career, and maybe it's time you invest in your spouse. Say, whatever it takes, I'm going to make sure she succeeds or he succeeds. And again, you're going to hear the Lord what he wants you to do. But my point with all this is this. As I look back at the Lord's faithfulness, I could never have lined it up. I didn't even know what kind of faith I needed to get where I am today. But even when I wasn't faithful and I didn't have great faith in what he was going to do, he did it anyway. And my point is this. He wants to take you places you could never, ever imagine or dream of in your finances, in your marriage, in your relationships, in your career. But you're going to have to take a step. And you know the best way to take a step is to look back at his faithfulness in the past. So I asked Jeremiah if we could close this service with just a time of brief worship where we remind ourselves that all of our life he has been faithful. All of our life he has been so, so good. With every breath you've breathed up to this point, he's been guiding you and leading you. So I want to you don't have to sing if you don't want. You can just let Jeremiah sing. He's got a greater voice than all of us put together. But maybe you want to sing it out loud as an act of faith, saying, Lord, I don't know what's ahead. I don't even know how to have the faith I need for what the journey is ahead. This treatment I'm about to go through, I don't even know if I've got the faith to go through it. I don't know if I've got the faith to deal with this with my kids. But man, all my life you have been faithful. And I'm going to depend on that because like we sang earlier, I've seen you move the mountains and I believe you're going to do it again. So as we sing this song, whatever, if you want them to stand or sit, what do you want? Stand. Let's all stand. Sing this out. And then just ask the Lord, Lord, what is it that I need to do as a step of faith today to move to where I need to go, where you want me to go, what your plan is for me? And we'll sing that through a few times, and I'll close this out in prayer. Go for it.
All my life you have been faithful. Sing it. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life, sing it again. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. All my life, one more time. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so. With every breath that I am in, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I'm gonna sing of the goodness of God.
Yeah. Lord, we thank you that even when we aren't faithful, we don't even know how to drum up the faith. You are faithful because you can't go against your nature. Pray for those this morning, Lord, that whatever it is, the step of faith they need to take. Faith apart from works is dead. So I pray you give us the courage to take it so that we can be on the other side of those people that say, man, a person with experience is never at the mercy of a person with a theory. I've experienced his faithfulness. I see it. I've seen him do it before. He's going to do it again. He doesn't change because he can't go against his nature. So I pray you give us the courage this morning. If you're here this morning and you have not taken that first step of faith, which is to say, man, God, I'm going to surrender my life to you because I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to give it to you. You've made a mess of your life. You know who you are. God's already been speaking to you as I've been speaking. So we're going to say a prayer in a second. If you say this prayer and you mean it in your heart, God is going to transfer you out of the kingdom of darkness. He's going to set you up with an eternal address with him in eternity. It starts when we say this prayer. Say this together with me, everybody. Lord Jesus, we repent of our sin. We turn from our way. We turn to your way. Help us walk in your truth. Amen. Hey, if you said that prayer, welcome to the kingdom of God. We got some resources for you in the back. You guys, man, take the step of faith this week. Whatever it is God was speaking to you, take that step and then just wait to see some amazing things he's going to do in your life. Be blessed. Y'all are dismissed.
If you are ever in the Seguin area, come visit us on Sunday mornings at 9 or 11 a.m. Or you can just download our app and receive our weekly messages right to your phone. Just text CC Seguin to 77977 and click on the link that you receive. May the remainder of your week be enriched with God's favor and blessings.